How we're living, boys, a lot of you guys are trolling yourselves with your builds because you don't know, can I go Bork this game? Can I go Titanic? Why can't I Logan? So I'm going to answer all of those questions in one video right now. And the Logan Jungle Subathon starts in an hour from when this video drops. So if you're watching this on the 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern, at 3 o'clock Subathon starts. That'll go for about 2 days. So 2 days, non-stop Briaring, tons of incentives. I would love to have you there. Please. Thank you so much for watching. So I'm going to simulate this video pretty simply, where here will be my team, Briar will always be the jungle, and enemy team will be right here. And I'll simulate and just show you guys like, hey, I would think about doing these things and the other things by pulling up my league client, showing you some item builds and so on. So if you see bruiser, you know I'm talking about bruiser builds, and you see damage, you know I'm talking about damage builds. The most tried and true thing that you need to learn about Briar build is if you have 2 frontliners on your team, you can go any build. That's why you have variance in when you can do certain builds and odds, because, well, your team comp matters, and this is one way that you can mess yourself up. So in this situation, when I have 2 frontliners on my team in a solid team comp, I would just look at enemy team and give myself a job, because our team comp's already very well rounded. So I will draw you up a few right here. This will turn into more of a yap sesh here. So if we have, let's say, for example, we have Ornn, Zach Jungle, Ari, MF, and Bard. Okay, they have a huge team fighting comp. The way I would see this is I can go any build here, and depending on what job I wanted, I could do this, where you could effectively go something like, you know, just pulling up enemy team. You could effectively go any of these builds. So you could go lethality here, and your idea with lethality here, right, which is the assassin build, is that you're trying to kill MF who goes to ult, or Ari if she gets caught out. You'd take high damage, you'd kill these 3, because these 2 champions, once they don't have a team around them, are pretty useless, not gonna lie. So that's one job that you can give yourself. But, for example, what if you didn't want to do that and you don't play lethality? Maybe you don't respect her, don't like it, that's okay. You could lock in a, you know, a Bork game, a Kraken game, a Voltaic, right? So the idea here is these 3 would be your first items, these would be your follow-up, right? And you could do 1 damage item first into bruiser build. That way you could both play frontline and backline killer, and you just choose your targets. And that's where, like, a lot of these, you know, team comp and build ideas come from. It's like, hey, I want to counter enemy team. I'm going to build items that do that. So you'd build Blade the Rune King and Black Cleaver. You'd bring down these 2 to no HP because the scaling HP on Bork, and then the Black Cleaver armor reduction would make them shred like butter, especially with your team that has a good AD and AP split. Now, it might be a little tough to keep up with all the things I'm saying, but basically here's some general tips. So I'm Titanic, right? So you want to play to be a frontliner. That means that if your team doesn't have frontline, I'm going to bring that up. It does like to kill squishies because auto attack reset, right? An extra 200 damage is huge. Bork, obviously, you need frontline on your team to really play Bork, unless you're going to all eggs in the snowball basket that you can get to your bruiser items without having too much trouble. It can kill tanks, which is what it's intended to do, but it's such a good 1v1 item too, so you can play either way with Bork, where you can play to go side lane in 1v1 or kill tanks. Stride Breaker over there on the right, I mean, it's not that great in comparison to other things. Stride Breaker definitely isn't as good as everything else just because it lacks damage in comparison. The slow really doesn't add too much to Briar's kit because you're already running so much faster than everyone else. But if you do pair Stride Breaker with a high damage item, it actually becomes pretty potent and decent, I would say. So it does need another damage item, which can suck for Briar. Sometimes you want to go like 1 damage item, full bruiser or tanky. But it's no big deal. If you put 2 damage items, could make you pretty much a demon on the Rift. Likes to 1v1, should be tanky with this. Eclipse right under me. This is the #1 snowball item. You need to be buying Eclipse so that you can get to your next item, next item, next item, meaning that you're taking this really cheap power spike and trying to get to your next items that are probably absurd items like Sundered Sky, and you're trying to just get it because it's really cheap, has a decent active, or a passive, whatever, decent proc, if you will, and you want to just get to your next items, get full build, and then maybe sell it for something else, depending. And then bottom row, right, Sundered Sky, generic bruiser item, god tier stats, healing. Black Cleaver, generic, great item. Your bleed makes it always full proc. The armor pen onto someone, god tier item, good against anyone, and you can buy it against squishies, guys. The high ability haste makes it flat out good, where, okay, if I need 2 Ws, well, this gives me the most ability haste. On top of the fact that base armors get high enough that it's always putting in really good work. On top of the fact, again, if you hit 2 people with an E, now they're both maxed out armor pen. 3 people, I auto anyone, I do anything, and it maxes it out. It is super high value. So now using that bruiser diagram that I just gave you guys, we can start to show you when those things would happen, right? So something like this, if I have a collie top here, now it's like, okay, if I go Bork this game, I might be risking a little bit more than I want to, because if I engage a fight and Braum isn't there yet, let's say Braum's still in base, everyone else is out here, right? Well, now you don't have a front line and your Bork build. So if they engage, who's tanking all that damage? Well, it's not you, unless you've snowballed to a point that you have tank stats now. So this is the biggest question that I get when it comes to Bork or Titanic, where it's basically just the fact that you need Bork if you wanted to give yourself the job of killing all these tanks. But you need Titanic to frontline for your team to even have a chance at objectives. And this is where a lot of you guys might not realize that you're actually kind of griefing yourself one way or another, because you're like, hey, I built Bork to counter enemy team, but you didn't factor in your team and what your team needed. So is it worth giving yourself the job of killing tanks this game? I would say no. I would say this is a Titanic game, even with them having 4 HP stacking champions, because I have Anivia and Aphelios, 2 champions that love playing front to back, right? Hitting the front line and then killing the back line. So I would build Titanic here, and I would try and stand in front of them, let them do all the damage to the tanks and kill them. Whereas if I wanted to give myself that job, what's going to happen when I ult in with Bork? They're going to not hook me into complete death every single time, and it won't be close. So here we have another example of what build would you go. Well, enemy team has a top lane that will be fighting. Zac again, you have Victor, MF, Vel'Koz versus Vex, Tristana, Yuumi. So again, you don't have front line unless your top lane's there, so you have to look at your 4v4, right? One of the most important things about choosing your build is looking at your 4v4. Your top laner will not always be there. Top laners will be ping-ponging waves most of the game. You will play most of the game as 4v4. So because of that, it's worth keeping it in mind that you might not ever see this guy, and that's something that you have to keep in mind. So, for example, one thing that you could do here is you could pull up with a lethality game. Lethality right here, if you look at it, right, it's either Hubris or Profane, you're going full assassin, and you're trying to get 1 kill and get out. Well, that actually works this game, even with no frontline in 4v4, if you can fully outskill enemy team to kill 2 or 1 or 2 on the engage, which, again, I wouldn't say is the most consistent strategy of this game, but it's worth bringing a little bit of emphasis to the fact that you can get away with taking the suboptimal build if you know what your job is. So if my job that I give myself is I'm going to kill their bot laners every time with 0 help, now it's just Victor, Zac versus your Yuumi and Trist, who shouldn't be able to die to them, and then Vex engaging and causing some ruckus. So one of the biggest things that I see people mess up on is they will build, let's say, lethality this game because they have triple range, but not realize that if you're hitting Zac playing lethality, you've just trolled yourself super hard. So the biggest thing that I try and tell Briar players is you can always go lethality into 3 ranged, and there's nothing wrong with it, especially if you're like playing like that and you've learned a lot and you're actually pretty good at it. You could always go lethality into this team and people would look at you crazy. But the idea is that hopefully this guy isn't there, right? And then it's just these 4. And if I engage onto these 2, right, get a big fear, kill 1, kill the other, okay, now they're just left with these 2 versus these 3. So sure, it's a lot of work on my plate, but if I like to play the game that way, then I'm going to play the game that way, and that's just what it is. But it's definitely a real strategy that people don't realize. The number one question I get every single time I stream, every YouTube section, everything, is what's the difference between lethality and crit, Logan? I'll try and make it more obvious this time. So, lethality wants to kill 1 target like an assassin, get out, come back. That's what it does through items like Collector, proccing as you're running away, opportunity to give me movement speed if I do get the kill, and then reset my cooldowns to come back, Edge of Night, blocking a spell. Good. Now, lethality does do good damage, but crit does more. But the problem with crit is that it doesn't get very good defensive options. Your defensive option is either a shield or a reset my life, which lethality does get Edge of Night plus GA, right? So you get a little bit more defensive stats because, blocking a spell sometimes is better than a shield. If it's a Lux Q, you're not seeing the light of day through the shield. It doesn't matter. Whereas if it's, blocked here, then you're fine. So crit wants enemy team to not have important CC spells, right? Stuns, polymorph, stuff like that. So a team like this, I would say that crit actually plays easier into this because if Lux shoots a Q, I would sideways W, I would dodge it, right? Now they have Jinx traps and Jana Tornado, which all I have to do is flash, or they have to just accept that someone's dead or whatever it is, right? Like, if the implication is that all three people are certainly ready for me to engage, then crit can be kind of tough. But crit plays to find that 1 second, that one moment where enemy team is not all prepared. You throw W, you juke, do whatever you got to do to dodge CC, and then you get to tear their team alive. And it will not be close. Briar does so much damage with it. The two variations of crit are basically, you have lethal tempo crit, which plays with Yuntal, where basically you use Yuntal's extra attack speed that it gives on proc to fully stack your lethal tempo so that you can go crazy. A lot of times you want to go Yuntal crit into things that actually have a tank that doesn't have a lot of CC. So something like if this was Mundo, right? Where like I could stack up my Yuntal on this guy and then ult someone else while my lethal tempo is still stacked. Or you have Hail Blades crit, which is basically just doing this line. The biggest difference between the two is that if you're playing crit for attack speed and lethal tempo and you want to auto attack 20 times a fight, then you'd go Yuntal. And if you want to be just big damage on Hail Blades, right? Boom, 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 and then they're dead, then that's, Hail Blades. So Hail Blades wants just more AD, more raw damage during Hail Blades, and Yuntal likes a little bit more attack speed to get you that lethal tempo stacking. The main thing to look out for when you're trying to play crit is just you're looking for low CC team comps. So like if this is Azir, that can be good. If this is Ezreal, it could be even better, right? Give me another support with low CC. Let's say Nami, right? Where like all of this is jukeable, right? I can just go crazy with crit. Look at crit this game, right? And my team doesn't matter yet. When you're playing high damage builds, most of the time you're just looking at enemy team, because you're not playing to ever frontline as a high damage build. But that is an option that's taken away from you, and you need to keep that in mind. So yeah, definitely I would say that crit is a high all-in feast or famine. Enemy team has low CC. If they have high CC, you're going to just have to get creative with how you play. But overall, it can still do it, especially when you're snowballing. But it is easier to play crit into low CC, and lethality can be your high damage option to play into CC with all of the different defensive, interactions that you have by getting, a ton of movement speed or, a spell shield and GA. So can be a little different, but they're both high damage. One's better into CC team comps and one is worse. And that's it. So a quick recap of what we learned is basically when you're playing Bork, you need frontline on your team, and enemy team needs good targets for Bork to hit, either someone to 1v1 or a tank stew to shred. You have Titanic, which is your fallback if your team has the worst team comp on Earth, which is often why you play Titanic the most, is because a lot of time people don't care about draft, they pick their favorite champ, just like we do on Briar. Next is lethality, right? Lethality does high damage, but you need to pick it into low CC or more CC comps than crit. And crit, you want to bring straight into no CC comps and just completely shred them into non-existence. It's also worth noting that if you're a build specialist, your ability to pilot that build and know your damage and know situations will often be like more than picking the right build that you're not good at. So that's what I often try and tell you guys. Like, if you're a Bork Black Cleaver one trick, that's it, right? Try and learn other builds when you have time. But stop trying to like overthink about builds that you're not too comfortable with yet, because you won't know where to be, what to do, and who to hit. And that's what my YouTube tries to show, is that you can win in high elo with any strategy that you want, as long as you're good at Briar and you decide your job, right? And if you fail at that job, why did you fail? Go into the next game with a similar draft with what you learned. So, high ability haste, right? It's because I played against Malzahar before and I'm like, wow, I have no CDR this game. Let's try high CDR. And then it works out and I'm like, wow, that was awesome. I had a problem and I fixed it, which is good. And that's basically all that I try and show you guys, is that, hey, you can go, hubris without profane and it'll do fine. Or you can go profane and it'll do great. You can go tank top lane, because people like to write off these like more niche strategies, but the reality is, if you know your job, the canvas doesn't matter as much anymore. And certain other builds that do that really well are like Bruiser Crit right here, right? Bruiser Crit can do either job, but it doesn't have high ability haste. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, it's tough for me to simulate every single draft and what you could do. The reality of this type of video is to say that you can always make it work if you just decide what your job is and keep building on that knowledge and making it work. So something like Briar in this lobby could do multiple different things. I can go lethality, try and kill these guys, and then trickle down. I can go, Titanic first and play to Titanic, Black Cleaver, Sundered Sky, right, to have high ability haste, Bruiser, and try and catch Master Yi with a Q every time that he does it. Hopefully my team can kill. There's multiple different builds, multiple different jobs, and you just have to pick the one that you like and play the game how you like. And when you build that muscle memory, and when you build that amount of comfort with what your job is, or what your combo is, or what target you need to kill, you can do crazy things. Now I'm done cutting the video, and I'm going to just tell you guys everything that I truly think about Briar, and hopefully you guys make sense of anything like this. So, all Bruiser builds are in the same category in my head. They all want to do the same thing and frontline a little bit, do some decent damage, and they have different options that work for them, like Iceborne Gauntlet, like adding Bork, like adding Titanic, right? They all have small little niche things that they're better at or worse at, and that's kind of you learning what itemization is, and that's how you, hey Logan, how'd you pick the better build here? Well, most of the time I just look at the champions, so let me just say it this way. You pick your build based on your team's champs and enemy team's champs. That's flat out, that's 100%, that's every single thing. You guys need to completely internalize what I just said. I get so many questions on, how did you decide this build this time? And it's like, well, I just looked at their champs, looked at my champs, and then simulated the fight in my head before I decided. And that's it. So the easy way to see this is that Titanic is a frontline bruiser that kills squishies well. So if enemy team is 5 squishies, a lot of you might be like, you could have done crit there. So could have done crit. True. Could have done lethality. Right? But what if my team didn't have frontline? Then Titanic grows a little bit in size in comparison to those builds, because now I can do the job of killing squishies while also frontlining for my team, which is a separate way to win the game. So a lot of team comps can do multiple builds, but it's about how you like to play, what you're comfortable with, and what you do the best. So I would say that if I'm against a team of squishies and I don't have frontline, right? Then this build goes +3, this build goes +1, this build goes +1. Right, saying that this is the best one, this one is a good option, this one's a great option. Now crit, in this circumstance, right, could, if low CC, go +2. Okay, and then lethality can always work with and without frontline. Okay, so again, it's all about you understanding what your team comp needs or has or just needs to get done. So against a team full of squishies and I don't have frontline, Titanic's the best because I can frontline and kill squishies well. If their team has low CC, I can just go crit, not need a frontline, and just kill them all. And the lethality can always work with and without a frontline, but risky. So that's why it stays at +1. Because you'd be better off going Titanic in this situation. So that's the risk. The risk is that you won't have any frontline at all. So when Bork to 1v1 enemies, Bork to kill tanks, health bruisers. Right? This is when Bork is good. Bork goes -1 when no frontline, because it needs to auto, which takes time. That's Bork's biggest limiting factor, is like when I go lethality, I have a lot of spell damage and I have a lot of scaling and I hit a lot of damage on hits, right? Bork needs a lot of autos, but does a lot with those autos. So if you are versus high CC, the amount of autos you get is lower, right? Because you're CC'd, you're not going to be autoing. So tons of CC kills Bork builds if you don't play it well. Good. So we covered Titanic and Bork. Let's talk about lethality, right? All I want to do, kill one target, get out, come back, do the same thing. It's awesome, super fun playstyle. Has more defensive options than Crit does, and that's what allows it to play differently. Crit, the moment enemy team is exposed, no CC, they messed it up, your team caused a lot of havoc, forced them to be in a weird spot. Crit goes crazy. High damage. If you can get a full charge E into wall, boom, good stun, and now you just killed any target. Now, I want to go on a small rant about AP Briar because it actually is possible, and I've proven over a year ago that I can get Masters playing this stuff, and here's the final game of it, right, where I got Masters playing AP Briar. I know that it's possible. I've proven it, and I've documented it being possible, so get over it, man. I don't think, as a competitor, I don't think it's fair to say that it is better than just going a regular Briar build. Like, going a regular Briar build, even in the worst scenario where enemy team buys armor really well and your team's full AD, I think that's still better than going AP in those circumstances, unless you're, you know, the GOAT of AP, your team is full CC, you are very well versed in it. I think only then could you go even with another Briar build. But I do think it's possible, and I've proven that you can do it. So if you're the type of person that you want to main AP Briar, go ahead. And I've proven it for you so that you can dodge some trash talk. Now, the reality is that playing regularly is better, and this video is made for the competitive Briar player, so I wanted to go out of my way to say AP Briar is never better than playing regular, but it is possible. But yeah, so back to what we were talking about. So you have all of your main builds, and now you just kind of slot what build you're playing into one of these categories, where you have Titanic or Bruiser, right? You have the Bork or On Hit builds, and then you have lethality, crit, or AP. Those are your 5 build archetypes, and now you just have to understand what your job is and when it's good, right? So on hit would be anything like going, you know, Kraken, or, well, rather, the easiest way to see what type of build you're playing is just look at all your items and what do you have the most of, right? So if you're going Kraken into, Black Cleaver into Titanic into Death's Dance, you'll start to notice that you have more Bruiser items than you do on-hit items. So this would be a Bruiser build, okay? But if I did this, right, Kraken, Bork, Black Cleaver, Guardian Angel, Wit's End, right? This has on-hit, 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 and technically on-hit. I would say Black Cleaver is more of a Bruiser item, but it can be an on-hit item. But yeah, so you have more on-hit items, so this would be an on-hit build, where you want to, on-hit things, right? You want to kill tanks, you want to kill health bruisers, you want to 1v1 enemies, you want to do all this stuff. And it can be slight frontline, but it's not frontline, right? It's like an off tank, if you will. And so on, right? And lethality, obviously lethality stat, crit, same thing. Yeah, so you mostly just look at your final build and decide like what you have the most of, and that's kind of where you are. So if you're going like, you know, I'll use my YouTube for an example. If you're going something like, you know, Hubris into Bruiser, like I did in my most recent video, then that would be Bruiser build. If you're going double on-hit item, you're going on-hit build. You're going Kraken into Black Cleaver Death's Dance, it's Bruiser build, right? And that's kind of where you decide, okay, now I looked at enemy team, I decided I want to play Bruiser. Now I can pick through all the Bruiser builds, which one would work best here, right? And that is the easiest way to understand what build you should go. Where, again, it's really just knowing what each build's job is. Now does that job line up with the lobby? And that's how to do it. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully that all makes sense. I'm going to be updating my guides a little bit more. They're in the description. But basically, tanky Bruiser, right? You build something like this. You go into the notes and see what each item wants to do and when it is good and so on. Yeah, man, this is the sauce. This is what Briar is. So I'm always so weird about a video like this because I've done other full guides like this, and it's just so circumstantial in my head on trying to like teach you guys like when to do what and so on. You know, like, so I've always pulled this website up and tried to explain it, and I would just have like builds pop up. Yeah, I felt like people didn't really like how this worked, so I liked trying it this way. Let me know which one you like better. And again, if you're talking about like builds, right? Well, builds actually popped up and everything. Can talk about rune pages real quick. I mean, it is very simple to understand rune pages, right? You have your lethality page right here, right, for Hail of Blades. You have your lethal tempo pages, you know, something like this. And then you have standard, which is Bruiser, which would be something like this. So let me know what you guys think. A little bit different setup for the video, but I think this one worked better. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Briaring, and hit that subathon. This video went live an hour before it starts, 3 p.m. Eastern on the 23rd, so see you there.